Hello and welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Recently I received my copy of Joe Manganiello's The Crypt of Perpetual Darkness. I've already unboxed it and shared my initial impressions. You will find a link to that review in the video description below. But today I am taking a deep dive into the quest book to explore the story and give my opinions on the individual adventures. Naturally, there will be spoilers ahead, but I will warn you when they are about to start, so if you aren't a Zargon player, you will know when to switch off. But first, a brief overview. The Crypt of Perpetual Darkness is an adventure written by a guest author, and it does feel different. Slightly out of sync with a normal HeroQuest story. For a start, Mentor doesn't make an appearance. He doesn't turn up at the start to introduce the adventure, and he doesn't guide the heroes once the adventure is underway. This isn't a problem in itself, but I do feel the storyline is missing, at the very least, an explanation for his absence. He's not the sort of guy to abandon his chosen heroes after all. Plus, the heroes do tend to be at Mentor's beck and call, and I'm not sure they would all decide to go off on a jolly adventure without at least consulting with the old codger and making sure Janine from HR has enough staff to cover them while they are away. That aside, I do like the setup. The forces of Dread have invaded the town where the heroes currently dwell. They have taken over the place, and the heroes have resorted to working out of a secret hideout. Great concept. When you bring the threat to the hero's doorstep, you add personal stakes and drama. This isn't about saving the world, this is about saving a home. Yes, it's not the hero's actual home, they all come from different parts of the world, but it's the place they call home for now. This is the backdrop to the circumstances leading to the hero's first quest. They are drinking in a local tavern when a visiting gnome tells them about a crypt buried in the Marsh of Sorrows that is the resting place of an ancient weapon. The gnome has a map, the heroes decide to follow it. Pretty straightforward and also a classic trope. Heroes in a tavern hear murmurs of a valuable MacGuffin, time to go on an adventure. What follows is a 10-part questline which introduces some interesting mechanisms, adds some very light role-playing elements, and has a deeply unsatisfactory conclusion that forgets its initial premise entirely. It is also worth noting that this quest was originally written as part of the HeroQuest crowdfunding campaign for people who owned the core set, the first 2 expansions, and some bonus miniatures. For the most part, you are only going to see commonly occurring foes from the core set, your classic orcs, goblins, and undead. However, there are times when a few extra components that are not in the core set or this expansion would be helpful. For example, you may find a room containing more than 4 skeletons, or NPCs that you don't have miniatures or tokens to represent. Also, some quests use doorways that are placed on the edge of the board. In expansions like Keller's Keep, such doorways were referred to as wooden or iron doors and had special door miniatures. For this expansion, they are simply referred to as doorways, and you are supposed to use regular door pieces. Of course, if you have iron and wooden doors, you can use those instead. Overall, there are only a few instances of this, and for anybody who has been collecting HeroQuest at retail and has everything, it won't be a problem. But anybody buying Crypt of Perpetual Darkness as their first expansion may be occasionally perplexed. And with that, we can start the deep dive. From here on out, we are in heavy spoiler territory, and only Zargon players should proceed to avoid ruining your own adventure. Quest 1. The Rat and Candle Tavern. As already mentioned, the heroes are drinking in the tavern when a gnome tells them he has a map of a mysterious crypt which contains an ancient dwarven weapon. The heroes agree to go with the gnome, but then he is murdered by some arriving goblins, and it all kicks off. In this mission, the heroes start at the tavern, and Zargon places a stairwell in the opposite corner of the board which represents their hideout. They have to fight their way through the town and reach the stairs. So here the board is being used to represent the buildings and winding alleys in a town, which is a nice change of pace. I think there has been some good thought put into the design of the tavern. There is a secret door for a side room that then leads out to the back alley. The tavern owner hides here when the fighting starts, and if the heroes find him, he gives them a ring of return, and this is just the weirdest choice. Why does a tavern owner have such a valuable magic item? and why would he gift it to the heroes? Also, this magical item returns the heroes to the starting point of the dungeon, so it's totally useless in this first quest where they are trying to get to their hideout. Even worse, it trivializes Quest 2, which we will talk about momentarily. Most of the other locations in this mission are red herrings, ransacked houses and dead ends. However, you can find a blacksmith who will give you a magical throwing dagger, clearly one of those fancy blacksmiths. And there is a treasure chest which contains a couple of speed potions. Quest 2, Jailbreak. At the end of Quest 1, the heroes return to their hideout and they study the map that the gnome gave them. It's written in a form of Elven that hasn't been used in centuries, but the heroes know a scholar in town who could decipher it. Problem is, he's been captured by the forces of Dread. It's time for a good old-fashioned jailbreak. Now, admittedly, I think the idea that a party of heroes, which may have an elf or wizard in its ranks, can't figure out what this elvish script says is a bit wobbly. Furthermore, I feel their first plan would be to visit Mentor to see what he can tell them, rather than trying to rescue an elvish scholar. And I'm not sure I'm okay with the idea that the heroes know their friend is in the clutches of Dread, but they only think to rescue him because they need something. But I do appreciate a rescue mission. And one of the things I really like about this second quest is it takes place in the same part of the town as Quest 1. You start in the same hideout location, and some of the layout is the same. It's reminiscent of the Corset campaign when the heroes return for the final showdown with the Witchlord. However, this exciting premise is, in my mind at least, not fully realised. The contents of some buildings are different, and there are some extra doorways to parts of the board that weren't accessible before, while other doorways are missing. You can't even access the tavern anymore. I have no issue with new areas being available while others are blocked off, but it should still feel like it's exactly the same place. There could have been doors in Quest 1 that were locked, and now they are unlocked, for example. And how exciting would it have been if events in Quest 1 had an impact on Quest 2? For example, maybe in Quest 1, the heroes stumble on the elf prisoner in the jail, and this is how they learn where he is. But they also learn he is heavily guarded, so now they need to find another way to rescue him in Quest 2. Meanwhile, their tavern brawlers put them on the most wanted list, so there are patrols in the streets forcing the heroes to sneak around. Maybe they go back to the tavern and use the cellar there to access underground sewers that will get them to the prison. Ultimately, I think it's a great idea having the first few missions taking place in the same part of the town, but the design doesn't lean into the concept hard enough. This mission does introduce the idea of a mouse trying to get into a tin of crackers. I have to say, in all my years playing HeroQuest, I never imagined anyone eating a tin of crackers. If the heroes help the mouse, it is revealed to be a wizard's familiar and will accompany them. It can be used once to scout out what is on the other side of one closed door. I like that idea a lot, and it's a good use for the rat miniatures from the core set or the rat tokens from First Light. Eventually, the heroes will find Vander, an elf with a standard elf hero profile. They have to return him to their hideout to win the mission. However, the Crypt of Perpetual Darkness does not include any token or miniature to represent the elf. Mythic tier backers had an alt-gender elf hero that they could use to represent Vander, and now anybody with the Mage of the Mirror or Rogue Heir of Elethorn expansions have access to suitable miniatures as well. Including a token would have been nice though. Also, I mentioned before that the Ring of Return from Mission 1 really undermines Mission 2, because as soon as the heroes find Vander, they can use the ring to instantly win. This will be the first opportunity to use the ring, so they won't have wasted it anywhere else, so they are all set for a very easy victory. I think I would have been inclined to drop the ring from the campaign and then have an alarm raised that brings on new enemies to chase the heroes all the way home. The rescue of Sir Ragnar in the core campaign set the template for a good rescue mission. Quest 3, Marsh of Sorrows. Vander translates the map, and it turns out the heroes have to find a specific rock in the Marsh of Sorrow, where the entrance to a lost mine will appear when a new moon shines. The mine leads to the final resting place of the Death Knight Gilbane. Unfortunately, when the moon shines, zombies spill out of the secret door. The quest starts with the heroes approaching the secret door, which is already revealed on the map. As they approach, zombies are spawning and grasping vine traps try to slow them down. Apparently, in the original version of this quest released for the Mythic tier of the HeroQuest crowdfunding campaign, this opening section of the mission used tiles from the Keller's Keep expansion. Those tiles have now been removed from the map layout. The mission itself is straightforward enough. Get through the mines and find the staircase down to mission 4. However, the instructions never tell the heroes that's what they are supposed to be doing. They are told the mine is the first step on the path that will lead them to Gilbane, but they are never explicitly told to look for a stairway. Also, these stairs on the map aren't identified as an exit. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but quest notes exist for a reason. Speaking of quest notes, there appears to be an error in this one. Point B is a secret door in a corridor, but the notes say heroes searching this room will find 250 gold. The room on the other side of the secret door is labelled E, out of sequence to the rest of the labels, and note E says heroes searching the room will find 250 gold. It seems like E is a redundant label in this case. On their way out through the dungeon, the heroes will bump into a swamp hag, represented by a sorcerer miniature, although I have a very nice proxy from the local Legends range by Steamforge Games. The weirdest thing about the hag is she has the escape spell, and if she casts it, she appears in the dungeon behind the heroes. So unless they backtrack to kill her, which doesn't seem worth the effort, she is then going to have to chase after them. She really needs to teleport ahead of them to a well-defended room by the exit for a final showdown. Quest 4, Lost Mine of Tijit Sherlax. Although the Lost Mine was originally described as the Lost Goblin Mine of Boobheelzia, here it is described as a lost dwarven mine that the goblins have subsequently inhabited. This place is trap central. Pits, spears and rocks everywhere. A really classic trapped mine to explore. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. However, there is something here I don't recall seeing before in any other adventure. One of the pit traps is also a secret tunnel leading to a different part of the map. Also be aware there is a point where the heroes are asked to take a randomly drawn spell scroll. If you only have this expansion, you will be drawing from exactly 2 spell scrolls, but if you have Return of the Witchlord or Keller's Keep, you can use all the scrolls from those expansions. The weirdest bit of this level is the central room with 3 treasure chests. 2 are trapped, one contains a giant Minotaur skeleton with a battle axe, so it must be a damned big chest, but if heroes search for treasure, they only open one of the 3. So the room has to be searched for treasure 3 times to open all the chests. If the heroes kill the Minotaur, they get its battle axe. Quest 5, Sunken City of Boobheelzia. At this point, my disbelief is about as willingly suspended as it can be. The heroes have gone through a swamp, which led to a swamp hag's house, beneath which was a lost dwarven mine taken over by goblins, beneath which is the remnants of an ancient human city. Anyway, this is another Find the Exit mission. There are some fun ideas thrown around this one. Secret doors that lead to crawl spaces that take heroes across the board, another one of those special magical mice that scout behind closed doors, a secret tunnel hidden behind a fireplace, and a door hidden behind a desk. I really like the way doors have been hidden in unique ways. It really does make it feel like the heroes are puzzling their way through a system of traps and tricks. To get out, the heroes need a key from the Goblin Queen Boobheelzia. She is represented in the mission by a regular goblin miniature, but if you have Jungles of Delthrak, you have access to a very nice goblin sorcerer. She also has an escape spell that seems to teleport her to a fairly useless location rather than plopping her in the middle of some reinforcements by the exit for a final encounter. One other thing to note in this mission is the heroes will find a door that is sealed shut but which is leaking water. It is described as holding back a deluge. This is exciting and suggests at some point the door will burst open and the dungeon will start to fill with water. This does not happen, but it should. A dramatic race for the door at risk of drowning would be great. Quest 6, Tomb of Hate. When the heroes enter this level, ghostly hands lock and bar the door behind them. It's a cool, spooky little bit of detail to try to make this part of the adventure feel a bit more dangerous. The mission itself is fairly standard. Find a couple of spell scrolls, kill the Mummy King, get to the stairs, job done. There really isn't much to say on this one, it's just a good, no-frills HeroQuest mission. However, it is one of those missions which reminds me that just because HeroQuest has furniture, you don't have to use furniture. The heroes are supposed to be exploring an old tomb, but there's an alchemist's bench, a fireplace, some bookcases, a weapon rack, a torture rack, a throne. Sometimes, when you want to set a scene, less can be more. Quest 7, Halls of Doom. Ah yes, we have explored the Marsh of Sorrow, found the lost mine, got creeped out in the Tomb of Hate, and now we are in the Halls of Doom. Never get to go to the dungeon of super cute puppies, do you? Apparently, there are screams of agony echoing through these tunnels, but I don't know why. This is another straightforward maze, lots of monsters to fight, and not much in the way of loot. The only 2 treasure chests are trapped, but otherwise empty. There is a potion of restoration though. And there's something else I don't think I've seen before. In one room, a hero who searches for treasure will find some holy water, but they will also be attacked by green ooze which they have to defend against. There is no indication you can detect the ooze with a search for traps. It's not the sort of thing I would do often, but a little curveball like that will keep heroes on their toes. Quest 8, Forge of the Mountain King. The Mountain King who lives under a swamp. I have to admit, I've sort of lost all sense of how this maze of tunnels is connected and where we might eventually pop up. Apparently, the forge was said to be lost to time, which isn't surprising as it was beneath a lost city, beneath a lost mine. But it's a good place to be because the dwarves here were forging weapons for killing dragons. Luckily, there are no dragons around here though. Right? There hasn't been a mention of one at all. Once again, the idea here is to get through in one piece, hopefully grabbing some useful stuff on the way. There are some fun set pieces, such as a set of rigged doors that will all open to reveal orc sentries, and a fight with a dwarven mummy. Oh, I wish we could have had a dwarven mummy miniature. The heroes may find a book that describes the creation of a weapon for killing dragons, which was buried in this forge. And there is a really interesting detail here that seems very throwaway, but shouldn't be. The weapon was buried with the dwarf's combat mount. When the heroes subsequently find and open the tomb, they discover a dragon spear with the skeleton remains of a bear. So, at some point, a great dwarven hero rode a bear into battle against dragons armed with a magical dragon-killing spear. And that's all we get. You come up with something that cool, and that is all we get. Incidentally, the book telling the heroes the magic weapon is in the forged tomb is in the very next room to the tomb itself. I'm not fond of that kind of pacing. I think it's better to find the book early to let them know there's something good in the dungeon, then tease them with the way out, a quick escape, but then reward them with a cool treasure if they decide to explore further and find the tomb. Quest 9, Throne of the Death Knight. We leave behind the forge and now we are in an evil place where the Death Knight Gilbane is growing in power to take over the world. And I really do feel like the nature of these dungeons don't hinge together quite the way they should. That so many distinct places are connected feels off. Nevertheless, our quest, whatever our quest actually is, continues. I guess now that the heroes have the dragon spear, the plan is just to leave. They went on this quest because a gnome said there was a great weapon in the swamps, and now they have it, so home time. But first they have to get through this dungeon. A fun detail in this level is there are magical dread skulls protecting the tunnels. They are placed as soon as they are in line of sight, and they shoot at the heroes in each of Zargon's turns until they are destroyed. I would have liked some floaty skull miniatures for them, but if you don't want to use the included tokens, I guess you could use skeleton miniatures instead. Speaking of skeleton miniatures, this level has one encounter that requires 6 skeletons at once. If you only have the core set, you will be too short, which means you will have to use the old trick of subbing in enemies of the same colour, most likely zombies. Gilbane is represented by a sorcerer miniature, I would use a dread warrior, and the heroes will need to defeat him to escape. If they search his room for treasure, they will find the Crown of Shadows. The Crown of Shadows is armour worn on the head and is described as a helmet, so no doubling up with a regular helmet. The card doesn't say a wizard can't use it, so this is another piece of armour you can give to characters with limited armour upgrades. The wizard is getting pretty buff these days. Incidentally, the crown is mentioned in the epilogue for this quest, so while it is supposed to be something the heroes must search for and may miss, I would ensure they get it. And, incidentally, Gilbane is referred to as a Dread Knight in the quest notes, but a Death Knight in the quest name and in other references for him. It's just a little inconsistency in the naming convention. Quest 10, the Crypt of Perpetual Darkness. Here we are at last, the titular crypt. Here is where the heroes will confront Venim, the Black Dragon. Lucky they found that spear. This mission starts with a really fun trap. Lured by the promise of a doorway up ahead, heroes standing on the undetectable trap slide all the way to the central chamber where all manner of undead beasties await. I rather like that. It's trollish, but not in a bad way. The only other thing of note here is the final battle with Venim. Venim is chilling in a secret chamber, seems to be minding his own business, but the heroes have decided they want to kill him and plunder his loot, so they do. The dragon's lair is in darkness, which is negated by the Crown of Shadows. However, heroes without a crown roll 2 less combat dice than normal for the first 2 attacks they make. There are also acid pools on the floor. Earlier in the dungeon there is a single bottle of oil of acid immunity which one hero can drink. All the other heroes just need to watch where they are standing. Venim has a bunch of spells, including a new one, Breathe Acid. This is exactly the same as the spell Firestorm, except it does acid damage. I would have liked to have a new spell card for it, but as I seem to be one of the only people who likes the fancy cards in this expansion, I expect most people won't miss it. But that's it. Kill the dragon, take his loot, a massive 1,200 gold, and go home. You then get to read the epilogue. The epilogue tries to make it sound like you did a thing. You defeated Gilbane, who at that time was in his tomb gathering power and had yet to make any offensive gestures. You vanquished the dragon Venim, who was never mentioned during the campaign, so we can assume had never been considered a threat. And you blocked Zargon's forces from getting the powerful artifacts in the crypt. Although I'm not sure they knew anything about the crypt and they didn't have the map you had. The epilogue then says your dreams are haunted by visions of an obsidian tower, and while all the heroes share the dream, the wearer of the Crown of Shadows suffers the most. Looks like the crown is evil, and a new quest awaits in the Dark Tower. And that's it. With a tease for the next adventure, we just end. What about the town? It's still under the control of the Dread Forces. Why did we kill a dragon that didn't seem to be bothering anyone? Why did we risk our lives for a dragon spear? It just feels so incomplete, like the initial setup was forgotten. I said at the start that invading the hero's town was a great idea because it introduced personal stakes, but then those stakes were forgotten and there were no real stakes at all. We killed some nebulous potential threats. That is certainly not how I expected the adventure to unravel, and personally I think some really strong ideas weren't fully realised. Joe is great. Having heard him speak about HeroQuest, I know how passionate he is, and I know how much of himself he put into this quest. It has a lot of fun ideas, and he clearly enjoys a classic D&D trope. He finally gave us a tavern and a dragon, which I think is wonderful. And I think, as a fairly straightforward, go from A to B hitting the monsters you see type of adventure, it's absolutely fine. But this adventure is just too much and then storytelling. You find a map, and then you go to the swamp, and then you go to the mine, and then you go to a city, and then you go to a tomb, and then you go to a forge, and then you go to a crypt. If anything, it feels like a sequence of standalone quests, and actually I think some of these missions would make really good one-shots or quests that you could drop into the middle of other campaigns just to add a bit of variety with some side quests. But as a cohesive narrative, I think personally I would have knocked some of the mid-quest adventures on the head and developed the beginning and the end a bit more. So you start in the tavern. Mentor uses his far voice to warn you of impending danger, and he explains that while the dread forces are in control, it's too dangerous for him to help you. The gnome gets murdered, and you get the map. While escaping, you discover your elf friend, but you can't rescue him yet. In Mission 2, you need to find a way to rescue the elf, but the town is on high alert, looking for you. There are sentries and patrols, maybe even goblin archers on the roofs. You find your way back to the tavern, and you use the cellar to access the sewers. In Mission 3, you are going through the sewers, fighting abominations, and eventually reaching a new area of the town with access to the rear of the prison. Mission 4, you rescue Vander and return him to your hideout. He tells you about the swamp, but points out that the map includes warnings suggesting there is a monstrous threat there that should not be woken from its slumber. Mission 5, your hideout is discovered, and as you flee, the forces of dread steal your map. Luckily, you remember the way, but now it's a race against the enemy as you explore the swamp and fight the swamp hag. Mission 6, you discover the sunken city. While in the city, the doors burst and the flood water gets in. There is a desperate race for the exit, the heroes escape, but their route back is blocked. They can only continue onwards. Mission 7, the heroes find Gilbane's tomb. They defeat him and gain the Crown of Shadows. Mission 8, they stumble upon the dragon's lair as they search for a way out. They disturb its slumber, and while they manage to fend it off, they know it will be back and much stronger when it's fully awake. They press on and they realise the dragon has built its nest in the remains of the Dwarven Forge where the dwarfs were making dragon-slaying weapons. What better way to ensure such weapons couldn't be used against it? The heroes find the spear in Mission 9, but the dragon returns and brings the tunnels down, trapping them and promising it will lay waste to the surrounding area in revenge. In Mission 10, the heroes manage to escape and return to the town. The dragon has rampaged and most of the occupying dread forces are scattered, but now the heroes must fight through the last few dread soldiers in the ruins to reach the dragon who, out of petty revenge, has set up a new nest below the temple, which he plans to make his new Crypt of Perpetual Darkness. Now we have a final showdown. And no, I'm not saying this is the best narrative ever and the only way it should be done. But this is more along the lines of how I would approach this type of story. The dragon is too cool to be an enemy that the heroes stumble on by accident and fight once. You need to have that moment where it's integrated into the adventure and becomes a recurring threat. And yes, the fight with the dragon must be the final confrontation, but that has to tie in with the occupation of the town in some way. But in the end, Joe Manganiello made the adventure he wanted to make. He poured his passion into it to make something that is very much his, and I give him credit for that. He got to live out a childhood dream, and throughout his adventure you can see fun flourishes and great ideas. But I think those ideas could have been expanded, and as such, I just don't like the questline as much as I should, and certainly not as much as I wanted to. But let me know your thoughts in the comments, because that is it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like this video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.